Well, needless to say, that did not work as planned. So I gotta make sure everything's working as it's supposed to one more time, and then we're gonna get into reading. Wait a minute. Let's see. Okay. Doo-doo-doo. Okay, fantastic. We back in business. So yeah, I tried to use a hotkey, and that hotkey ended the stream. And I know I just set it up before we went live and checked if it's going to save replays. They even had a little tutorial to help you, and I followed through that, even though I knew it was simple. But I guess it's not as simple as possible. So sorry for the disconnection. Glad to be back with everybody. Or maybe I'll read it sideways. Stop some water. Ooh, excuse me. That's right. It's after he had a fight with his homeboy Bimbo, because Bimbo told that he was cheating on his girl. Several days after the run in with Bimbo, I stepped out of the wintry cold into Shell Shock's house and greeted the fellas. Yo, man, what's happening? A chorus of greetings ran out from Cooter, Shane, and a few others who were lounging around in the den smoking reefer. Shell Shock, who had been in the back room when I first came in, strutted out front with a cigar sized joint dangling limply from his lips. That's interesting. I don't know. Facebook went to starting soon, and I definitely didn't change the screen. Okay, we're gonna move forward. Keep the party going. He took a deep drag and handed it to me. Hey, little ugly nigga, where you been all day? I took the joint, sucked it in, and exhaled slowly, letting the smoke ooze through my nostrils. I've been chilling, man. Got a lot of things on my mind. Without responding, he walked over to the stereo, lifted the top to the turntable, and put on a an album by Marvin Gaye called What's Going On. The music started, and I settled back on the couch and listened, toking the joint whenever it was passed my way. Gay's silky smooth voice, complemented by an alto sax, crooned through the large speakers filling the room. I'd heard the album before, but for some reason, tuned in really close to the lyrics this time. Mother, 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 there's far too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. It was different from the romantic themes of most record albums. It dealt with a range of things that were going on in this country: poverty, racial unrest, the Vietnam War. The country was one big pressure cooker that seemed ready to blow. Gay sang, say man, I just don't understand what's going on across this land. I sat there and thought about all the effed up things that have been going on in the world and in my life. I had no job, no money, no future. I felt lost, alone, out of place. My life was going down the drain, and I saw it happening, and it seemed unable to do a damn thing to stop it. I thought, my mom was right. I'm going crazy, losing it. My mother had known for some time how troubled I was. She questioned me about the dark sunshades I sometimes wore at night. She found a pistol in my coat pocket. She'd answered the telephone and had anonymous callers tell her they were going to F me up. After the fight with Bimbo, she called her minister to counsel me. She was worried and trying to figure out what to do with me. I listened and gave saying, nobody really understands. I knew I was hurting mama. There were times when I wanted to tell her that I knew she cared, but my macho pride got in the way and I could never bring myself to express my rolling feelings. Besides, I couldn't process my confusion sufficiently in my own head to explain it to someone else. When they questioned me, my parents interpreted my stony silence as stubbornness. In truth, it was a reflection of futility. The gulf between what I instinctively knew was happening to me and what I could express was so broad that I gave up even trying to explain. Gay saying, we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. I'm gonna try again because who would they answer? But only love can conquer hate. Okay, it's back right. The futility ran so deep that it festered and churned inside of me, quietly making gunpowder. I walked around feeling tense all the time. The only way I could balance the tension and the deep depression was to stay high all the time. Like the rest of the fellas, I had started getting high earlier and earlier in the day. Some of the time I began drinking and doing drugs the first thing in the morning. I knew I couldn't let myself reach that point. That's one step from being a drunk 24/7 on the park bench. But I was close enough that it worried me. My dress and appearance were slipping. I started wearing the same clothes day after day and didn't care whether the colors matched or not. I was starting a slowly, steady process of wasting away. Cavalier Manor was filled with other guys going through the same drug induced decline. I rested my head on the back of the couch, stared up at the ceiling through glazed eyes, and thought about the changing times. Things in my world and outside of it were changing faster than I could handle. Even things between Liz and me weren't the same. Around that time, when we were talking once, I broke down crying and told Liz I felt like I'd never been loved and feared that I didn't have long to live. Later, Liz told my mother those things, and I cussed her out for revealing my private feelings to somebody else. After that, it seemed like we were starting to drift apart. When relations among the fellas and me started changing, I knew my life had spun completely out of control. The break with my man Bimbo was just another indication of that. I thought about what had happened, how far back Bimbo and I went, how tight we used to be. I didn't feel as tight with any of these fellas anymore. The deeper we got into the drug thing, the more paranoid and ruthless we became. Guys who had been the best of hanging partners since way back when started turning on each other and ripping each other off. I couldn't even trust Shell Shock, my tightest stick man. I learned this during one of the last stick ups we pulled together. My old buddy Cooter came along and served as the getaway driver while Shell and I went and took off some dudes, leaving a Norfolk dance hall. We made good money off those dudes, but on the way back to the car, Shell Shock insisted we not tell Cooter what we gotten. That way we wouldn't have to split it with him. Reluctantly, I went along, but later, when I thought about it, I concluded that if Shell Shock would rip Cooter off, he'd rip me off too. After that, I didn't hang with Shell Shock anymore. The vibe started changing between him and me. Marvin Gaye sang, "Mercy, mercy me. Things ain't what they used to be. Where did all the blue skies go?" I toked on the joint, considered the future. It seemed so vague. Life seemed to be closing in. I felt trapped. I was unemployed, broke, and desperate as hell. Marvin Gaye sang, "I can't find no work. Can't find no job, my friend. Money is tighter than it's ever been." My favorite song on the album was Inner City Blues. It captured the depth and despair I felt setting in. It was the only thing that came close to explaining the frustration turning inside me. It was the first time I'd heard someone put it all together in words like that. Oh, make me wanna holler the way they do my life. Yeah, make me wanna holler the way they do my life. This ain't living. Do, 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 do. That's how I felt. I wanted to holler. Listening to that album and thinking about all my problems made me feel like crying. Absorbed in my own thoughts and carried away by the reefer, I hadn't realized that everybody around me had stopped talking. The fellas were listening and thinking too. I looked around the room and noticed thick clouds of reefer hanging heavy in the air. The lights were dim. It felt like all of time was suspended. When the album ended, nobody said a word for a long, long time. Like the others, I couldn't speak. We just sat there thinking. Chapter 16, Busted. After graduating from high school, Liz got a job as a sales clerk at Robert Hall Village, a new department store that opened near Cavalier Manor. When she had been working there for a while and gotten to know some of the other employees, we worked out a scam with several black cashiers in the store. After we got it down, I walked into the department store like a regular customer, got a shopping cart, and went on a spree through the men's section to get things I wanted, into the ladies' department to pick up a few items for Liz, and then on to appliances. When I finished, my cart was filled to the brim. I pushed it to the counter, where a black cashier promptly rang up the price of one item, a $3 pair of socks, placed all my merchandise in a large shopping bags, stapled them closed, and attached the receipt. I paid the lady, then took the bags to the front of the store and walked past the jewelry section, where Liz stood behind the counter, watching nervously as I approached. Our eyes met briefly, then turned away, as if we were two total strangers. I walked toward the front door, past the security guard who glanced at my sealed bags and then turned his attention to something else. Once outside, I broke into a grin. We were over like a fat rat. I think Liz loved that ripoff because it was risky and exciting, and it made her feel like she was learning how to hustle. That hustle worked so well that we took Christmas orders from people in the neighborhood for jewelry, clothes, appliances, anything they wanted. We made a killing. In fact, Liz and I, along with some other employees who also were robbing the store blind, got off so well that the place eventually went out of business. By cleaning out the store and forcing it to close, we took away jobs that employed people in our community, and we got rid of a business that brought revenue to the area. We didn't view it that way at the time, but we did ourselves in. Once the place closed, Liz had to find another gig, and I looked around for another hustle to get into. After all my other hustles fell through, I went back to what I knew best. There were several stick-up teams operating from the neighborhood. I hooked up with Nutbrain and Charlie Gregg, two old heads who I figured knew everything there was to know about working the streets. Nutbrain and Charlie Gregg, who were both 3 years older than me, were longtime swinging partners who had hooked up when they were both living in the projects downtown. They were thick as thieves. They were thieves. I had supreme faith in their experience and skills as a stick-up man. Nutbrain, who used to school us about sex when we were kids, was tall, slim, and jet black. He was good with his hands and cool as ice. Nothing rattled him. Nutbrain, who lived about 4 blocks from me, didn't hang on the corner much. He walked past our block doing his slow old man pip, looking like he had somewhere important to go. He always kept a brown bag tucked under his arm. Occasionally, he'd stop on the block, chat with the fellas and me, pull a pint of bottle from the bag, take a swig, and talk some more. Although his nickname suggested otherwise, Nutbrain was smart in his own way. He didn't work often, but when he did, he specialized in on the job injuries. Every time I turned around, he was waiting on a check from some former employer who owed him compensation. He said, "Let me hold something till next week, man. I got some money coming in from a case I won when I hurt my back." I liked him a lot. He knew how to get over, and he was on and the one. Charlie Gregg was married and had children. He worked a job but needed money badly. I met him through Nutbrain. Charlie Gregg was brown skinned and wiry like me, bow legged and cross eyed as hell. He had bad feet that looked at each other that looked like it wanted to take him in a different direction when he walked. Nutbrain jokingly called him Funky Winker Bean. Nutbrain was the mastermind of the team. He could case a joint perfectly and figure out a plan just like that. I also liked his style. Unlike Shell Shock, he had ethics. If you worked with him, you never had to worry about getting your cut. And he focused solely on businesses, which Shell Shock and I had avoided. I knew there was no real money to be made unless I crossed those tracks. I was right. When we hit one spot, we did good right away. Walked away with a grand apiece. It was a big step up from the chump change Shell Shock and I used to take from the ghetto blacks. After that hit, I stayed up most of the night counting the money over and over, marveling at what we've done. It gave me a rush to know that I'd taken all that money from white folks and gotten away clean. At the same time, there was this fear that had been nagging me for a while. It was the fear that the law of averages was closing in. This ripping off couldn't go on forever. Cats all around me were getting popped for one thing or another and being sent to the penitentiary left and right. I figured soon or later I'd take a fall too. Sometimes when I thought about it, I didn't care. Sometimes I cared a whole lot more than I was willing to admit. Like the night Brain and I hit a supermarket on Military Highway. He scoped it beforehand and laid out a plan like a pro. We parked the car in the hotel parking lot nearby, walked across a large field to the store. Dressed in dark clothes, we entered the supermarket just before closing time. Brain told me, check the aisles and make sure all the customers are gone. I went up and down the aisles, stopping in one to pick up a Morton apple pie from the frozen food section. I went to the checkout area where Brain was waiting. He pulled the gun and calmly ordered the cashiers to empty the registers. It took a minute for the other store clerks to figure out they were being robbed. I was jittery. The place was so large, I feel somebody might appear from behind the aisle and open fire. Appreciate the love. Doo-doo-doo. I definitely heard it. Appreciate the love. We got the cash, burst out the door, and began low running, hard, across the lumpy field. All the while we were running, I'm thinking this is going to be the one. This will be the time we get popped. I ran thinking it, feeling it, remembering how Charles Lee got surprised in the house and was wondering if it might end that way for me. I ran and listened, half expecting to hear a loud crack break, the night silence, and the feel of a hot sting of a bullet pierce my back. I listened, but all I heard was heavy panting coming from Nutbrain and me, the two of us breathlessly trying to outrun fate. It's hard to move slow with fast money. Each time I went out on a job, I told myself this would be the last. And each time after that, I found a reason to go out one more time. That was the case with the Sheridan hit. We went out mainly because of Charlie Gregg, who was pissed because he missed out on the supermarket job. So Nutbrain came up with the Sheraton Hotel at Military Circle Shopping Mall. He scoped it out and figured out it would be easy big money hit. Fresh off the other job, I didn't really need money. When Nutbrain called, I decided to use the fund to do something nice for Liz. Buy her a gift, an expensive looking dog, an Afghan hound. Okay, hey, I got dressed that night in all black skull cap and dark clothes. I went to the living room and paced back and forth, waiting impatiently for Nutbrain and Charlie Gray to come scoop me up. When my mother walked through the house and saw me standing there peeping out the front curtains, she knew right away something was up. She always got nervous when she saw me leaving the house. I was still on probation for shooting plies, and she wanted to make sure I didn't take another fall. Where you going? She asked. I egged her like I usually did. I acted like I ain't even hear her. Don't you go out there and get in no more trouble, she warned. I ain't gonna get in no trouble, mama. I'm just going out for a while. The car horn sounded. Charlie Gregg and Nutbrain had pulled up front. I was glad. It would help me escape another awkward scene with mama. I left her standing at the open door watching, straining to see who's in the car out there and whose car it was. I climbed into the back seat of Charlie Gregg's Dodge Charger and greeted the brothers. Yo, brother, what it is? Nutbrain, his usual cool self. Charlie Gregg was pumped up. Let's do it, baby. Let's make some money tonight. Riding down the interstate with the music blaring from some 8-track tapes, I sat quietly in the back seat and thought about what my mother had said. Normally, it wouldn't have bothered me, but that night it did. My intuition was burning again. It too was telling me I shouldn't go, but I was committed. We were on our way, speeding on Interstate 264 toward Norfolk Tunnel. Nutbrain had figured that 10 p.m. was the best time to make the hit. We reached the Sheraton right on time, ready to make a quick walk into the door, then take the few short steps to the registration desk, where we were sure thousands of ducats were awaiting us in the cash register. But when we got in, nothing was set up like we thought it would be. The hotel yacht lobby, usually empty and unguarded, was crawling with white people dressed in tuxedos and gowns. There was some kind of special event going on. A policeman stood around watching as if half expecting something to jump off. Nutbrain scanned the crowded room and said what Charlie Gregg and I were already thinking. Let's go, man. There's nothing happening here. I took that as another sign that it was a bad night. But Charlie Gregg was set on making a hit. We went into the convenience store, bought some wine, and drove around looking and drinking for a quick pedestrian Victor Road. We drove to Hampton Boulevard, and a light bulb came on in Nutbrain's head. Yo, man, I know somewhere we can hit. Drive past that McDonald's down the street. Somebody comes in every night around 11 to pick up the money and take it to the bank. We can lay for him outside for the door and take that shit from him when he comes out. It sounded simple enough. I was uneasy. It wasn't the original plan. We didn't have time for the usual drive run or the getaway route, and the white neighborhood where we were parked, the car looked like a foreign land. I felt we should call it a night, but I didn't say anything. I couldn't punk out. When Charlie Gregg turned off the engine, Nutbrain turned around and handed me the gun. Nate, it's your turn to carry the piece. He carried the gun and done most of the work the last time we went out. Despite the wine I guzzled to numb my fear, I was nervous. I just didn't feel right. As we entered the side door of the McDonald's, a beefy white man carrying a small white plastic pouch came out from the employee entrance. Now, my intuition told me he was the mark, but instead of drawing on him, I froze, then turned and ducked into the men's restroom nearby. Appreciate the love, y'all. Nutbrain and Charlie Gregg followed. Once inside, Nutbrain said, That was the man. He had the money in that pouch. The man had glanced waringly at us, gone outside and climbed into a parked van. I said, maybe we should get him while he's in the truck. Nutbane poked his head out the door and saw the man had started the engine. Nah, he's about to pull away. We're gonna have to do the store. He said it like we had no other choice. Like we couldn't just leave and try some other time. Charlie Gregg nodded his approval, so I went along. After planning our move, we burst through the door that read employees only. I flashed the silver plated pistol and yelled, "Nobody move." The workers, stunned, turned and did what they were told. They left their cash registers, huddled in the corner, and stared wide eyed at us. As shocked customers ran out the side exit, Nutbrain and Charlie Gregg hurriedly emptied the loot from the cash registers in the food carrying bags with golden arches printed on the side. I stood guard near the door, pointing the gun and looking around. I didn't feel in control. There was too much light, too much space to cover, too many people in those ugly brown McDonald's uniforms looking right at our uncovered faces. Out the corner of my eye, I noticed the store manager trying to ease his way into a side office. I pointed the 32 pistol at him and said, "Freeze." A minute later, he tried again, and I aimed the piece at his face, tightened my grip on the trigger, and tried to decide in that split second what to do. I swear I ain't want to blow him away. All I wanted to do was get cash and dash, but I made up my mind that if he moved again, I had to smoke him. I hated him for putting that pressure on me. I didn't even know him, and I hated the hell out of him. Intuitively, I sensed that he was Uncle Tom, one of those head scratching and willing to put his devalued life on the line to protect the white man's property. I looked at him in the eyes and warned, "Move again, I'm gonna bust your ass." He remained still, kept his eyes fixed on me. Once Nutbrain, Once Nutbrain and Charlie Gregg had cleaned out the cash registers, we turned and ran out the side door, sprinted to the parked car a block away. We sped off into the night. 2 blocks down the dark street, we ran into a dead end. I knew then we were goners. Charlie Gregg wheeled around and sped out the cul-de-sac and turned on the Hampton Boulevard. A few minutes later, he looked in his rearview mirrors and said, "The rollers are behind me." Nutbrain told him, "Just be cool. Maintain the speed." I sat in the back seat, tense, bracing for the bus. The police cruiser pulled closer and flashed his emergency lights. Then others came from nowhere and surrounded us. In the seconds, while Charlie Gregg steered over the curve and stopped, adrenaline rushed my head. Panic thoughts came at me rapid fire. Burst out and dash. No, shoot first, then run. Finally, I heeded my strongest intuition. Sit still, you're busted. After surrounding us, the policemen sprang from their cruisers with their guns drawn, pulled open our doors and shouted, "Get out the car, get out the car." One cop grabbed me and pushed my chest flush against the side of the car and clamped his cold steel handcuffs to my bony wrist. He shoved me into the back seat of a cruiser. The emergency lights flashing overhead created a weird dreamlike effect. Cars slowed and motorists peered through their windows, trying to get a better look. Some cops waved them on and directed traffic, while others flashed lights inside and around the getaway car. I stared blankly out the window and did something I learned to do years on the streets when fear or reality gave too much to face. I let my emotions go limp. That was my only protection from freaking out, my only guard against coming apart. I've done that before. The police drove us back to McDonald's where the employees stood inside. They escorted the manager to the car I was in and asked him if I was one of the men who had robbed the store. I glared into the manager's eyes, half hoping to intimidate him. He returned my glare with a dash of contempt. Yeah, he was the one with the gun. We drove off, beginning a long ride towards the police headquarters. A ride in a police car always felt like a long journey to me. I always have time enough during such a ride to review my whole life. I rode in the back seat, stared out the window, and let my mind wander aimlessly. I thought about the crazy things. I thought about how much I hated being handcuffed, how much of me, how much it pissed me off when the cops locked them on too tight around my wrist. I wonder why they had to cuff people's hands behind their backs like that. You can never appreciate the love, appreciate the love. You can never sit straight up in the seat when you're handcuffed because your full weight comes down on you, squeezing your wrist painfully between your body and the back seat. Most of the guys I had ever seen ride in the back of police cars bobbled from side to side like bottles of water to keep from leaning back and crushing their hand. Over time, I learned to lean sideways and rest my head against the side window to keep the weight off my hands. Riding down Hampton Boulevard, I watched the world pass and thought about the people I saw walking carefree along the sidewalks. Where are they going? What are their lives like? I wish I could change places with one of them. I wish I had listened to my brother, my mother. I wish I could rewind the last hour of my effed up life and reset its course. I wish I were somewhere else, anywhere but riding the cop car. My mind did a sweep of all the landmarks in my life, the kind of sweep described by people who have had scrapes with death. It certainly felt to me like my life was over. I was 20, half burnt out on drugs, depressed, and hopeless a lot. At some point in life, long before I ever held a gun, I had lost control. I tried to figure out where it had gone wrong and when. I wished I could vanish, go back to the point of my life where it seemed, well, hopeful. Strangely, I thought about my third grade spelling bee. I was an honor student then and felt so full of promise. I had made it to the competition finals, but was eliminated after misspelling the word. I think it was bicycle. If I can go back to that night on that stage, I thought I would spell that word right and straighten out of all my other things in life that had since gone wrong. My thoughts were distracted by two white rollers sitting in the front. They were laughing, joking about the stick up, predicted how much penitentiary time we get. I wanted to lash out. I wanted to tell them, kiss my black ass, but I kept quiet. We got to the police station along with the cars carrying Nutbrain and Charlie Gregg. When we got out, Nutbrain made the mistake of saying something to the police escort. Yo, man, these handcuffs are too tight. The cop smiled broadly, stepped behind him, and yanked him tighter. Is that better? Nutbrain grimaced. They took us into separate rooms and started the process of interrogating us. Without talking with Nutbrain and Charlie Gregg, I knew what to do. Don't confess to shit, and don't give them any meaningful info until you talk with a lawyer. That's what everybody yells when they get busted. I want to talk to my lawyer. It just feels like something you should say to let them know that you can't be pushed around. They took me into the office, sat me in a chair. Then they started the little cop head games that had become familiar to me. A few of them stood over me with their shirt sleeves rolled up like they were going to do me in. A black detective did all the talking. When he asked me my name, I didn't answer at first. I considered giving him a hard time to show them I wasn't scared, but it was late and I was too tired to play games. My name is Nathan McCall. Address 6 Vaughn Court. Black cop sat at the edge of the front desk of me and said, tell me what happened tonight. I said, I ain't do nothing. I need to make a phone call. He looked at the others, indicating it was a waste of time trying to get me to talk. They laid off the crime questions and stuck to the basics. When the interrogation, fingerprinting, and processing ended a few hours later, we were thrown in the bullpen, a huge holding cell about 40 feet square, filled with 30 or so drunks, junkies, and assorted other losers. This place smelled like piss and vomit. The guys were leaning against grimy walls, looking tired and pitiful. It was about 2 in the morning, and the lights were dim. Everything was quiet. Nutbrain, Charlie Gregg, and I huddled near the bars and compared notes. Nutbrain was cool. Charlie Gregg, who seemed nervous, kept asking me questions. How did it go? It went all right. What did the rollers ask you? The same old dumb shit they always ask. Both of them had telephone family members to say that they were locked up. I would have felt stupid calling my mother to say that I was in jail after doing exactly what she warned me not to do. No, I thought I'm gonna ride this one out on my own. But I called Liz about 1:30 a.m. and told her the news. She freaked. What happened? What happened? I calmed her down, gave her instructions on how to find out and when and where I'd be taken for a preliminary hearing later that day. After we got that straight, we hung up. I thought about how glad I'd be to see her face. Nutbrain, Charlie Gregg, and I talked some more, then decided to go to sleep. There was nowhere to lie down. The benches along the wall had been taken by the early arrivals. Some guys were trying to sleep standing up like cows. They leaned on the walls and held their heads skyward, closed their eyes, their bloodshot eyes like they were praying. Others were sprawled on the floor sleeping hard. I staked out a spot on the floor and stretched out near the bars. The concrete was cold and smelly. I found a dingy half roll of toilet paper, slid it under my head to use it as a pillow. Lying on my back, I stared at the greasy ceiling and thought about the new mess I was in. Mama was right. I wouldn't be so lucky this time. I was penitentiary bound. In a weird way, that didn't seem so bad. I figured I might have been saved from something potentially worse. I had fully expected a more tragic fate, to be caught by surprise like Charles Lee, the burglar, to go down in a shootout with police like Prairie Dog. I knew that if I had come out of that car shooting, those trigger happy cops would have blown me away. Later that morning, Charlie Gregg, Nutbrain, and I were shackled to some other inmates and led downstairs for preliminary hearing. We looked like shit. Our hair was nappy. We hadn't brushed our teeth or washed our faces. I know I smelled like the pissy odor that rose like a yellow mist from the bullpen floor. As we stood before the judge, I glanced around the courtroom looking for Liz. I didn't see her. The judge asked us a few questions, then he set bail for each of us at 25,000. I remember thinking, 25,000? I'll never get out of here. To get me out, my parents had to raise 2,500. Nutbrain and Charlie Gregg's people had to do the same. Less than 2 weeks later, after the stick up, we all got out on bond just in time for Christmas. Okay, that's what time is it? We'll start there because we keep on going. We're gonna go in a whole nother section and I ain't gonna finish it. So I think that's the perfect place to stop, right? So I hope you have a great weekend. Next week we're going to be out of town, so we'll be back for Thursday Night Book Club, so that should be easy. But Tuesday nights, I definitely will be in a hotel room somewhere. So I don't know how we're gonna do that. It might be a little freestyle like we did when we were in Jacksonville. But if I don't see you Tuesday, I hope to see you next Thursday as we continue reading Makes Me Wanna Holler. And again, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And from my soul to yours, I'll check with you later. Peace. Oh, man.